Welcome to Our Drummers Musicians, your backstage pass to Melbourne's vibrant music scene. Recorded on a cosy couch in Brunswick, join us as we explore what it truly means to be a musician and speak to the diverse talents that make music in our city. Today, we delve into Melbourne's classical world with Oboist Anne Blackburn, who has been the second oboe chair of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra since 2013. Anne completed her Bachelor of Music at the Australian National University. She is an exceptional talent with a prolific career that has seen her work with essentially all of Australia's major orchestras, including the Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Tasmanian Symphony Orchestras, as well as performing with the Australian and Victorian Operas. Anne has studied and performed internationally with the Auckland Philharmonic, the Malaysian Philharmonic Orchestra, and her chamber group, which also played in Germany and New Zealand. Join us today as we explore Anne's musical journey and ask why she makes her own reeds. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians on the land in which this podcast was recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Luke. Great to be here.
I know we've spoken about it before, but I find it so fascinating that part of your job is to make reeds and, most instrumentalists buy their instruments or like practice their craft, but part of it is actually like making the reeds.
Yes.
And I thought it would just be like a really interesting thing to ask you about again, because it's like such a unique part of your job to, also craft part of the instrument.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's a huge part of the role actually, playing the oboe. So it's not just about having mastery of the instrument itself and being able to play everything that's in front of you, but actually making the mouthpiece itself, which requires an enormous amount of time and effort and energy. And I'd say probably I spend more time actually on my reeds than I do practicing the instrument these days. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that something that gets taught like in an oboe lesson?
Not so much when you're younger. As you progress as an oboist, when you go through university, things like that, yes, it's taught as you go along that you should be making your own reeds and honing that craft.
Wow. So was there someone like that, I don't know, tutored you through the specific art of making the reeds?
Yes, I guess every teacher that I had along the way taught me something different. And you just talk to other oboists as well, and you get ideas from different people who say, oh, try this, or try this piece of cane, try this staple. Oh, such and such uses this gouge. This, it's all very technical and nerdy, really.
Yes.
Once you get into the details of oboe reeds, it's you're talking about sort of hundreds of a millimetre, so it's pretty crazy.
Wow. So do you wear like major magnifying glasses to do it all with?
I do have to wear glasses, mainly because my eyesight's not as good as it used to be. But yeah, it definitely helps if you can see the detail.
Wow. So when you're not making reeds, how much time do you have to spend practicing as part of your, role with the MSO?
Certainly requires a certain amount of time to upkeep, or maintain the level that you're at. When I'm playing a lot in orchestra, so if I'm doing like a standard rehearsal day, sort of 5 hours of contact time, I find that that's almost enough playing in the day to sort of keep my technique and my chops, as you'd call them, in good shape. But when you actually have a week rostered off or something like that, that's usually when you do the most practice. Firstly, because you've got more time, but secondly, because you actually, you need to keep yourself in good shape. So generally, I find an hour a day on top of my normal workload is kind of enough to maintain the standard that I'm at. Of course, when you're younger and and you're building, your technique and just your general playing, you need to do a lot more than that. So at university, I was doing more like sort of 2 to 3 hours a day. But now, given the sheer amount of playing I'm doing on a weekly basis, an hour is more than sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And I also generally try to have one day off a week at least,
Okay.
where I can just allow my body to recover from the big concerts and things. So
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So is that like the 5-hour contact time that you spoke about? Is that inclusive of a performance, or is that just like a rehearsal during the day and then you do a performance in the evening on top of that?
So it varies from day to day. So our usual rehearsal schedule is 10 to 4, so that'll be a 10 to 12:30 and then a 1:30 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Then if it's a concert day, generally there'd be a general rehearsal in the morning, 10 to 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and then a concert in the evening at 7:30.
Okay.
So we work in calls. So a call being generally a 2.5 hour to 3 hour either rehearsal or a performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and we can't work more than 10 calls a week. So we have an enterprise bargaining agreement that we work under.
Okay.
That stipulates that we can't work more than 10 calls in a week.
So does that sort of factor into the rostering of which musicians get asked to play, or does the orchestra as a whole just ensure that they're only playing, that many performances because everybody is always playing at every concert?
Yeah, these days we do a lot of split weeks where there'll be one project going on at the same time as another.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the first week of the year we did the Lion King and the Cybeck composers concert in the same week. So half the orchestra was doing Lion King and the other half was doing Cybeck.
Okay.
So generally, though, nobody is allowed to work more than 10 calls a week.
Yep.
Yeah. So we could roster more than 10 calls into the schedule as long as nobody is doing all of those calls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how many oboes are there in the orchestra?
So there's technically 4 positions for oboe players. So there is a principal position, or the section leader.
Mm-hmm.
There's an associate principal. There's a second oboe, and then there's a cor anglais.
Mm-hmm.
So the cor anglais is a deeper version of the oboe. But cor anglais players always begin as oboe players, and often will still have to play oboe as well.
Okay.
So occasionally they'll have a part that's actually doubling on the oboe and the cor anglais.
Right.
But their specialty is the cor anglais. So they have to come in, and every time there's a cor anglais part, they're on. And that always usually involves a solo as well. So
right.
they come in, they sit there for 3 hours, and then they play for 5 minutes, and it's always a big solo.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess when you're with the orchestra then in these rehearsals, do you ever break off into sections, or does everybody just sit there on the stage together and, if you only play for 5 minutes, you potentially are just sitting there for hours whilst, I don't know, the orchestra practices certain sections?
Yes. There's a lot of sitting around waiting.
Okay.
A lot of time on stage where you may not be required, or you're a tacit for a movement or something, and you just have to twiddle your thumbs.
Okay.
Just be very patient. And, it's a nice time to sit and just listen as well to your amazing colleagues, because that's the thing that blows me away about this job is, like, I'm surrounded by these brilliant musicians all around me, and just hearing them every day is just the greatest privilege.
Wow.
Honestly, it's so incredible. They are just awesome to listen to. Yeah.
So what's it like with, being part of such a big organization, where we were just talking before about how it's one of the only positions where you can be a full-time musician, like on salary, rather than working, for one gig or a run of shows at a time. Do you have, like, I don't know, really good relationships with everybody because you spend so much time together, or because it's in such like a formal, strict environment of rehearsals, like there's no social time, and so everybody comes in and plays and it's amazing, but then also, I don't know, goes off without much interaction? So what's it like?
Yeah, like, honestly, it's like a big family. We all, we all know each other pretty well.
Cool.
Because there is a lot of downtime in the band room, before concerts, after concerts, at the bar, during interval you're chatting to people. So although we may not be talking during rehearsals, there's always a lot of time outside to be getting to know everybody. And because you are with the same people pretty much all the time, you do develop these really quite strong friendships with everybody, and it's really special because you've got people of all ages that you're sitting next to. So, when I first started, I had my principal oboe was in his 60s, late 60s, and then the associate principal oboe who came in was in his early 20s. So I was working with people from all different age groups, and that was really cool too because you're connecting to people on all different levels. And it's just the music that brings you together. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like? Because you've been with the MSO for this would be 11 years. If you started in 2013.
Yeah.
You must have seen like a lot of changes over 11 years.
Yeah.
And are you considered now, I don't know, one of the more seniors for when all the junior woodwinds and stuff are coming through?
Yeah, funnily enough, I think I'd still be considered mid-career. So I'm in my 40s at the moment, and that's very much, the sort of mid-range. There are still plenty of people in their 50s and 60s above me who would be considered more senior. People have been there, 30 years even.
Yep.
And it's interesting because you find people in the orchestra, they often don't win a job until probably late 20s into their 30s.
Yes.
It's actually quite rare that you get someone in their early 20s who would win a job in the orchestra. And there's several reasons for that, but mainly because it is such an incredibly grueling process to win an audition, and you've got to have generally a certain level of experience dealing with the pressure of that situation.
Okay.
Or at least to have had the experience of playing in a job and knowing what's involved. Yeah, so some people, of course, are just absolutely brilliant and can win a job at any age, but for the rest of us, sometimes it can take a little bit longer. Yeah.
So what do you mean when you say to win a job?
Yeah, so to win a job in an orchestra actually requires winning an audition. So, for example, my position, when I auditioned for the second oboe job, that hadn't been open for 9 years, that particular audition. So it's really about being the right place at the right time. You have to turn up for that audition. When that audition comes open, you have a shot at it, and if you miss out and say somebody else wins that job, then you may have to wait another 10, 20, 30 years, who knows how long. Because once that person has won the job, the position is tenured. They're a full-time musician now until they retire or booted out. So it really is like right place, right time. So, and the process of actually winning an audition it's quite full on. So it's like a blind audition. So you turn up on the day, you have a prepared set list of excerpts, and usually they'll ask for a Mozart oboe concerto or Strauss or something like that you also have to play. So you go and you're not allowed to speak because it's a blind audition, and you have usually your pianist with you who'll accompany you first for your Mozart. Then the pianist walks out, and then you just start playing your excerpts through, and they usually won't let you know which excerpts are in the first round until just before or maybe the day before, so you're not 100% sure. Anyway, so you play those, then you come out of the first round and you will have to wait for them to let you know whether you then progress to the next round or not. And if you do progress, then they'll say, right, okay, you're into the second round, now come back at 1 o'clock, and you'll have a different set of excerpts to play then in that round, and a different part of the piece usually, or they may ask you to repeat something, but usually it's like something different.
Is that on the same day?
Usually, yes, on the same day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for oboe auditions, it always is. For some string positions where there's like 50 to 60 people who apply, they may need to go into the next day.
Yeah, sure.
But oboe auditions is generally only sort of 10 to 20 people show up. And then you can progress to a third round, and then the panel may decide to appoint. They could appoint after the second round, they could appoint after the third round, or they may not appoint as well. So quite often with auditions, there'll be no appointment. If they felt that nobody on the day was good enough for that position, they won't appoint.
Right.
Yeah. If they do appoint, you then appointed to a 6-month trial. So just winning the audition is big enough, and then you've got to pass your trial.
Okay.
So that's why you call it winning a job, because it
Yep.
really is. It's very much, it feels like you've won a competition almost, like it's pretty full on. And to be honest, that was, I think, the hardest thing in my career was just trying to get a job.
Wow.
I was 35 by the time I won a full-time position. I'd done tons and tons of freelance work and played as a casual with this orchestra and with operas, with ballet, with, on tours, you name it. Like I'd played with all the different orchestras everywhere.
Yep.
But I just couldn't seem to get a job or just have that perfect day on the audition day. So the more auditions that I did, the better I honed that skill of actually doing an audition, because it is slightly different to doing the job itself.
Sure.
Well, very different actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like huge congratulations, because it's such a coveted position to get a full-time and tenured position in an orchestra.
Yeah, thanks, Luke.
It's a testament to your hard work and how much of an amazing musician that you are. What's it like then when you're playing in an orchestra where part of the orchestra is tenured positions, but then you also have all of these sessional and other short-term contracts of people coming in to fill seats? Does that create, an exciting mix because you've got new people coming in and out, or is there a bit of a tension between those that are in and those that are not?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I always find it really refreshing when you have casuals coming in. And in Melbourne, certainly, there's a lot of casuals that come in through the door, and so we're seeing lots of fresh faces all the time. I love it because I think it's really invigorating having fresh people in. But there is slightly more of a challenge in the job in that you have to get to know that person's playing when they're coming in. So, for example, if there's a casual in the oboe section, I need some time to adjust to their playing and they need to adjust to my playing. And, we might just, some notes might be slightly, intonation might be a little odd, or the sound might not blend on certain notes. So it's just there's a certain comfort, I guess, that you have with the other permanents that you know exactly how they play. For example, when I play with Michael Pisani, who's a cor player but acting principal at the moment, it's very easy because I just know how he plays. I know where to put things pitch-wise. It's very easy to play with him. So there's that extra challenge when you have casuals come into the section. But it's lovely. It's lovely when they do come in, and often they just bring a fresh perspective. And some of the older musicians can be a little tired and jaded at times, so the young ones it's really nice to just see that fresh energy and people who are excited to be there. And
Yeah, we've all played with musicians that are old and grumpy.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's nice to have someone that's really excited.
It actually wants to be there. Yeah.
So once you have a position that's tenured like that, then do people have to resit an audition to keep it? What stops someone, I don't know, stopping practicing or with old age losing some skills or something, else changing? Because if you can be in an orchestra for 20 or 30 years, that's a huge amount of time, and people are quite different after such a big time period. It's
very true, and it's one of the big issues that we do have is that people they don't always, but if they do stop practicing, they can lose some of their ability. We do have a process in the EBA which is called loss of proficiency. It's not something that anyone ever wants to go down. It's a pretty horrible path to go down. So most people, I think, do practice and do try to keep their playing at a really high level, because no one wants to be tapped on the shoulder and told that they're not playing well enough.
Sure.
But it can happen. It can. And it has happened in the past with certain players where they've had to actually sort of show them the door because their playing wasn't of the standard. But to answer your initial question, no, we don't have to re-audition for the job. So once we are tenured, once we're in that position, we're there, which is, it's great. Wow. It gives you a lot of security. But you can't rest on your laurels either. You
Sure.
need to keep your standard up.
Yeah, so what keeps you motivated when you're playing and like working on your personal technique? Because, I don't have a huge amount of orchestral experience because I only played in some in like high school and go to see different friends that play in orchestras. But I assume that you don't have very much creative control in terms of choosing the repertoire and I don't know necessarily how much specific creative choices you have around, certain phrasings or the way that you express the different oboe solos and things, which is such a different sort of role to someone in like a contemporary music scene where they have so much more creative control over the instrumental parts that they play.
Yes.
So like other than the excitement of being around other talented musicians to create music, what is it like specifically for you that helps you and I guess drives you to like keep doing this after so long?
Yeah, another awesome question. It is challenging at times, if I'm completely honest, staying motivated all of the time. It's not like you love it every single day of your life. Like some days it really does feel like you're going to work to do a job and you can't wait for it to be over so you can go home and pat your dog. I think what it is for me is you look at the programs and the conductors that you're really excited to work with, and they're the sort of weeks that keep you going.
Yep.
And there are some weeks that are just so fun that you just have such joy working with that particular conductor. It's just a great program. They've got really fantastic musical ideas and you can just feel the general energy of the whole orchestra is lifted. When our chief conductor, Jaime Martin, is around, there's a certain energy and excitement in those weeks and everybody just lifts. And so, I think that's the best way to describe it is it tends to kind of ebb and flow a little bit, that enthusiasm and the motivation. But there's also that self-discipline that I guess you always have as a musician, that you need to do it regardless of how you feel.
Yes.
That, okay, I don't feel like practicing today, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's what you do. You just get up and you just do it and you feel better for it afterwards. It's not always fun. It's hard work sometimes, but the rewards when it's good is just out of this world. It's worth the hard slog in the end when you have those really uplifting experiences on stage where, there's that magical connection with the conductor and your colleagues and you just feel that everybody's brought their A game. It's just really, really special.
Yeah. It's always so impressive, I've found, watching an orchestra because you have such a big sound from so many different people all working together and it must be, I don't know, I understand that it would be also, just another day in the office, but it's nice to hear you say that it's also like exciting to be sitting in there and just experiencing it as well as being, a performer doing a job, that it's still nice to play music with, such a huge talented bunch all working together to create like a moment in time.
Oh, it's just brilliant, Luke. I mean, it really is. And the fact that every week is different as well. Every week you're playing a different style of music. Like last week we were playing St. John Passion, Bach, and so very Baroque. Completely different style of playing with very little vibrato and just the way that you'd phrase things is completely different. And this week we're doing the music of Gershwin and Bernstein and it's like a whole nother sound world with, there's sort of a jazzy influence and I love that variety, it's great. I love that every week's a little bit different from the next. And like next week we're doing Star Wars.
Yes.
Which is even, again, that's fun as well. It's just different. But that's, so I love that variety that you have every week, that no week's ever really the same. And the good thing is that if it is a program that you're not completely thrilled with, don't worry, there's always next week. Yeah.
So what music have you been enjoying playing the most recently?
Oh, wow. We did a couple of awesome concerts recently with our chief conductor. So we did Mahler 3. And I don't know what it is about Mahler, but it's just always awesome.
Okay.
It just, brings out the orchestra's best, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's always really excited to play it. It's just so much detail and excitement in the music. It's just, it's the best. So I loved that. That was really great. And we did the planets as well the following week.
Oh, yes.
The Holst, the planets. With the Deborah Cheetham piece that she'd written called Earth, which was to complement the planets.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the Elgar cello concerto in the first half, which is a fairly standard rep. But, the planets we haven't done for a while, and I really enjoyed that too. It's just such good music.
They must be really fun to play.
So fun.
Do you have a favourite planet?
Oh, they're so good. All of them are good. I think Mars is just so cool.
Yes.
And then I also love Jupiter.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Yeah. But they're all good. Neptune's good too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're all fun.
As in putting like the purest oboe hat on is the one that's the most fun to play. Because I've never thought about the planets as like, I don't know, from the perspective of an oboist.
Yeah, maybe Jupiter is the one I like the most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a fun one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's an exciting piece. Someone was playing, or I was talking to them about the planets. Maybe it was because of the MSO doing it.
Yep.
And we put the suite on and just sat down and listened to it, and it's just so much fun.
It's great music. Really good.
So what's it like when you're doing pieces? I guess like the planets is a bit of a crossover because it's inspired so much of the like soundtrack style music.
Yeah, true.
But it's not traditionally like classical music, but a lot of orchestras now play film soundtracks like the Star Wars that you're doing.
Yeah.
What's that like doing, more traditional art music and then also these like contemporary pieces that are, I don't know if it's like more fun, but definitely like more accessible for a wider audience?
Yeah, it's they're quite different. General sort of classical, I guess your core classical repertoire is how I describe it, like your Mahlers and your Mozart and your Beethoven. I'd say that's generally a bit harder for us, for the orchestra. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain level of refinement in your playing that you need that generally film scores don't require. Mm-hmm. They can be quite technical, particularly some of those John Williams scores that are very, notey.
Yes.
But it's just not quite the same level of detail, and there's generally a lot more noise going on. So because a lot of it's to do with sound effects and kind of the excitement and thrill of what's going on stage, the drama, I guess. Mm-hmm. There tends to be more loud brass stuff and a lot more percussion and that sort of thing. So a lot of that finer nuance gets like particularly if you're talking about oboes, that gets lost in that sort of big loud stuff. So in a lot of ways, I find playing that repertoire a lot easier. It's a lot more relaxing, and also because the focus is on the screen behind you, because people are watching the movie during the concert as well as hearing the music. Mm-hmm. The focus isn't entirely on you, so it just takes a bit of the pressure off that, like what you'd normally have, where everyone's watching the orchestra and hearing all the fine detail. So
yes,
yeah, it's a totally different style of playing, but I love it. I love both. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the fact that you have these really intense weeks that are quite stressful, where you really got to switch it on, and then other weeks where you can sort of chill out a little bit more and just sit back and enjoy it and not be under so much pressure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a screen that is like for the orchestra so that you can watch the movie too?
No, unfortunately. And the really annoying thing is that often we don't get any foldback on stage, so we don't get any of the we can't hear very well what they're saying in the movie. It's just wah, 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 wah. Oh. So I can't even really hear a lot of the dialogue, so it's not quite the experience that you would think. But having said that, it may be occasionally that some of us might put an iPad on our stand with the reverse camera on, but that's only a maybe, Luke.
Unofficially.
and if any of the MSO management are listening to this, no, it never happens.
So this year, is there anyone that you're most excited about working with that's coming in to do something with the MSO?
Oh gosh, I can't even think who's coming this year because I literally take 1 or 2 weeks at a time.
Okay.
And I could not even tell you, even though I've looked over the entire season in meetings and so forth, I couldn't even tell you what I'm doing in September, October because all I know is what I'm doing next week and the week after. So, yeah, I will be excited when I look forward and see what's coming up. But at the moment, I have no idea.
So I suppose, is that just because you have so much material being turned over that, you can only learn so much at once?
Yes. I do feel very overwhelmed if I look too far in advance into the diary because every week is a different program and that requires practice generally. Most programs you need to spend some time practicing. So, yeah, I just can't look further than this week and next. I just need to get through and survive this week, let alone what's even going on next week. So, so that's why I probably don't tend to look that far in advance. Yeah.
I was thinking about that oboe film. What's the famous movie that has the main theme?
The Mission?
The Mission.
Yes.
Do you have like a petition regularly for that to be the next movie soundtrack that you do for the big feature?
No. That's a very long movie, Luke. I think it's 3 hours or longer. Yeah.
Okay. I've only seen it maybe once.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Even if we did play that, I would probably not be playing the main part anyway because second oboe is always the supporting role and we generally don't get the big solos, unfortunately. So I would enjoy it, but we don't have a huge amount of say as to what's being programmed from week to week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could start like a small petition.
A small one, yeah.
Yeah. Of signatures and see how many people would like to see the Mission. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be great.
It was interesting that you said that the second role is always supporting.
Yeah.
Because in like big band music, the lead is like if you take like the trumpet section, the lead is like the highest note, and the second trumpet is normally the soloist.
Really?
Yeah. But when you say you play the supporting roles, does it ever like change, or is it basically just the first oboe plays all of like the leads and the melodies and the solos, and you're essentially playing like harmonies to that, or other supporting roles?
Generally, second oboe, yes, you play a lot of stuff in the thirds and sixes and unison as well. So it depends how the composer writes, but generally when you are playing with the first oboe, it's always sort of a third below. Occasionally you will get your own little solos here and there in second oboe, but they're never the most exciting ones. The first oboe always gets the big soaring gorgeous stuff. Unfortunately that's probably one of the things about second oboe that's a bit challenging, is that you sort of you sit there and you hear everyone else playing all this awesome stuff and you never really get to play it yourself. It's a completely different role though, because you have to take pride in knowing that you've done a really good job. Like we have other challenges in that, playing in the low register on the oboe is very hard, and second oboe has a lot of that sort of stuff in that low register.
Okay.
To play it softly and, with a really beautiful blended sound is quite challenging. So, yeah, even though no one else would even notice it, probably if I've done a good job, I have to sort of pat myself on the back and go, yeah, good one, Anne. That was, that was good. Like, you were a good orchestral musician today. You didn't stand out. You didn't stand out from the crowd. You blended in.
Yep.
That was awesome,
Yeah. Well, I was just chatting on one of the episodes with, I don't know if you've met him yet, Tim Mallis, but he was doing a little bit of like shadowing work at the MSO the last couple of weeks, and he's mostly like a piano accompanist, and he was similarly saying about how when you're an accompanist, like the key is that nobody notices you and you don't stand out.
Yes.
And yeah, it would be fun, I guess, to like do more, but if someone's saying, oh, that piano accompanist is great, then he's probably not doing his role very well. And similarly, people would notice if you played something poorly, it would, I assume, stand out. But when you're doing your part well, then there's no spotlight on second oboe.
Exactly. It's pretty thankless in that respect. And oboists generally will say, when you play second oboe, it's like, if people can hear you, generally you're not doing a good job. Yeah.
But if you were missing from it, it would still be noticed.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Not to downplay, the importance of your role.
It's an incredibly important role, actually. Yeah. And actually, you do end up making the first player sound better.
Yes. That's
the reality, yeah. So if you have a poor second player, it will make the first player sound really out of tune and really not good. So it is very important, yeah.
So how do you feel about, like, being in the second role? Is there part of you that wants to, like, audition for the principal role if that becomes available, or do you like the role and the complexities of the second oboe position, or it's something that you don't really think about, and if you're in the middle of your career now, maybe that's something that you think about in 10 years time?
It's an interesting one. I think if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have said yes, definitely interested in the principal role. But now I think as I'm in my 40s, I think life has changed a little bit in that, my priorities have probably changed a little bit. And I think I've realised that it just doesn't matter what role I play. I'm just honestly grateful to be there, to be playing. And I know that I have a special gift playing in that low register on the oboe, that's actually one of my specialties. It's something I'm really good at. And that shouldn't be overlooked either. So just because I'm not playing the big solos doesn't mean that I'm not a good oboist. It just means that my skill set is perhaps a little bit different.
Yes.
So I think I've come to learn just to be, I guess, at peace with where I'm at in that role, and that, I just don't have to be in the spotlight. It just doesn't, it's not important to me.
Yes.
It's really, to me, it's about teamwork and having a harmonious, for want of a better word, section. To be working together really well with your colleagues, and because that's what it is. An orchestra, you're part of a team.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think now I'm more than happy to stay in my role and also to look at having other things in my life outside of music, that playing second, I feel there's a little bit less pressure there than when you're playing first oboe. And so it gives me a little bit less stress in my life as well, which I really appreciate at this time. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And now I can't imagine going back and sitting in that role and putting up with that level of stress, which I have. I mean, I have sat in that role many times in the past, but I think now I'm quite happy not to. Really, yeah.
Is this something that you talk about with other musicians, like these roles and things? Like, it's pretty special because there's only a couple of oboists, whereas I don't know how many string players there are, but there's a lot, and often would, I guess, be thinking and feeling similarly about, I wish I was the principal violinist, but there's quite a lot of violin chairs that you've got to work your way up through to get there.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys talk about, or is it, I don't know, more private, or you're just having a good time, so it doesn't really come up?
Yeah, people don't tend to talk about it that much. I think it's usually something very much intrinsic. It's inside of you. If you've got that ambition and that drive, and you want to aim for a higher position, then there's not much you can do about it anyway until a job comes up. So, I wouldn't say it's talked about an awful lot. Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, one of the things, obviously, everyone in I know would agree with this, but just finding contentment with where you're at in life is really important. So, it doesn't matter what area of life you're working in. I think that's one of the keys to being happy, really, is just to being really content with where you're at, and even if you're not exactly where you want to be, still finding the joy in where you're at now. That's really important.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, because it seems that you've been on that journey from being younger and wanting to, well, initially just to be able to get a position in an orchestra, and then to be able to win your position with the MSO, and then develop like the fulfillment and contentment in that role, rather than it being like a comparison or a stressful situation because you're constantly thinking about, I wish I was doing something else. But it sounds like that you can really appreciate what you are doing, and how important your role is and how awesome it is to be where you are and with that big group of musicians too.
Yeah, and certainly you have a little bit more contact time as well as a second oboe. So the first oboe, because there's two of them, they roster themselves usually sort of 1 week off, 1 week on, or they'll do half a program each. Whereas the second oboe's in for the whole program and often won't get as much rostering.
Okay.
So I'm very much like a constant in that section, and so I feel like I provide stability, and also I'm just there. I'm present for a lot of things that go on, that happen, and makes you feel really a part of it, really, really involved, which is nice too. Yeah.
Has that been your experience like throughout your whole musical life? When you were younger and like first starting to play, did you have like similar experiences where you felt like you were part of a great team with like your woodwind section at like a school orchestra or
definitely
as a whole?
Definitely, yeah. It's different in a professional setting, obviously, because the pressures is much, much higher. But I think music just generally brings people together, doesn't it? It's amazing the camaraderie that you have when you've played music with someone.
Absolutely.
It's really special.
Yeah.
And certainly, with my uni colleagues and even just doing work with different orchestras, you get to know people as you go along. And I've got all these contacts sort of all over Australia now, and it's really special. It's really, really special.
Yeah. What about outside of the orchestra? I know that you were doing like a chamber group trio.
Yes.
Do you still do that?
It's a bit complicated with our trio because the flautist and the pianist both live in different countries. So the flautist lives in Germany and the pianist lives in New Zealand. So when we do get together, it's usually only every 4 to 5 years. And then we'll do a sort of a week together where we'll do some pretty intense rehearsals and then perform at the end of the week, 1 or 2 performances, yeah. So I would love to do more of it, but it's challenging. Takes quite a lot of organisation, and you need the time and the money. So we actually played together recently in Germany. We met actually, and we did a concert at New Year's Eve.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So my partner and I went overseas specifically for this concert in Izny in Germany.
Wow.
With the trio. And we kind of worked our holiday around it. So it was very cool, very special and a fun thing to do. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I really enjoy it when I'm able to get away. But it is, it is hard. Like most jobs, you've got to apply for leave if you want to go and do things like that. So it becomes a little bit more tricky, I think.
Because you studied for a bit in Germany, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I had 2 years in Freiburg.
Is that how you met and started the trio?
Yes, actually. So the flautist, Elisa, I met her when I was studying in Freiburg. Yeah.
So are there any Australian musicians that you would consider doing, a different but like smaller ensemble work with? Or is it nice having something so different to the MSO and the special relationship you have with that trio that you wouldn't want to add like a third project to the mix?
Oh, no, I mean, I'd love to do more chamber music, and I'm happy to play with any musicians that are willing to play with me, really. It's such a joy playing with different people because there's different styles of playing, and it's refreshing. It's just more the opportunities don't come up as often, and as I said before, the job being full-time and, it's already pretty full-on and so getting the time, that's the thing I'd say is it's the time when you are working full-time to get those sort of small groups together, it becomes more and more challenging. But when I do it, I just love it. Yeah.
Yes.
So last year I had an opportunity to do one of the Hanson Dyer series they do at the Melbourne Conservatorium. I was playing with David Griffiths on clarinet and and Lyndon Watts and bassoon.
Okay.
And those guys, like, you know, they're just so fun to play with. They're just such gun players.
Yes.
And it's a totally different style of playing to the players in MSO. And, you know, MSO players are obviously brilliant, absolutely brilliant musicians, but it's just a different style. And so that's really good for your playing when you're playing with different people and honing the, you know, just it's more interesting, I guess. They phrase things differently. They have a different sound, different vibrato, and yeah, I enjoy that.
I remember seeing Dave Griffith when he was teaching at Monash.
Yes.
Because that was at the same time I was doing my music degree.
Yeah, right.
And they had a concert series every Thursday afternoon or something, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him play for the first time when I was in first year, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I'd never been so engaged in a small chamber group in the classical music scene.
Yeah.
And there was something exciting about the way he played and expressed and moved around, and
he's an incredibly exciting player, I find. Yeah, it's always such a joy playing with. And funnily enough, I studied with him in Canberra.
Oh, right.
Years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and our paths kind of, you know, crossed again later in life. It's just funny how the music world works like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's so many different musicians and in so many different scenes, and yet it's also, I'm finding, quite a small community, and everybody knows each other or is only one or two steps away from everybody else.
Definitely. Yeah.
I would love to keep chatting with you, but I'm aware of what the time is, so I think we'll just have to bring you back for season 2 so we can keep chatting.
Sounds awesome, Luke.
And check in again.
Yeah.
But I've been working on just a couple segments to end the podcast with.
Yep.
So the first one, the concept is that each guest asks a question of the next guest.
Oh.
So I have a question for you from my previous guest, Ellie Lamb,
right,
who is a jazz trombonist and composer.
Okay.
If you could record with one person from history, like music history, of a previous era, who would you sit down and record with?
Wow. That's a big one. Oh, man. There's just so many awesome musicians to choose from. To record with them. Specifically. Wow.
Whilst you think about it, can I ask, how often do you do recordings with the MSO rather than just live performances?
Occasionally, yeah. So we've been recording for a CD with the MSO over the last year or so. So that's usually about 2 weeks a year. I suppose we'd be doing, fairly intense sort of recording session. At the moment, we're also recording all of the Dvorak all of the Dvorak symphonies with our chief conductor for the LSO Live platform. So that's quite an intense sort of recording style thing. So so let's up that to 4 or 5 weeks a year. Yeah. So to record with. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that she's meaning to play with them or to, as a conductor. Could I choose a conductor maybe?
Yeah, it's slightly more jazz-centric phrasing, but open it up to an orchestra or a conductor. Yeah,
because I think as an orchestral musician, the first thing we think of is which conductor would you like to work with, because they sort of give you that overarching energy.
Right. Okay, well, which conductor?
Yeah. Oh, man. You know, I would really have loved to work with Bernstein. Yeah. Just all the stuff I've heard about him. And I love his music as well. Yes. And some of the film clips I've seen of him, he just looks hilarious. He's just got so much personality. I would love to have worked with him. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. I'll finish up with just 5 quick answer questions.
Yeah.
So what is your favourite venue to play in Melbourne?
Melbourne Recital Centre. Beautiful acoustic. Love it. Great for the oboe.
What would be your dream venue to play at?
Dream venue. Oh, I would love to play in the new concert hall in Hamburg. the one that was built, on the harbour there.
Oh, I don't know about this.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It's this incredible building that they built on the harbour. It's a building within a building.
Okay.
And it's huge. Apparently, all of the concerts there are sold out like 2 years in advance because everybody wants to go and hear the orchestra in this hall.
Wow.
Apparently, the acoustics are incredible. So, yes, that would be my dream. Yeah,
Cool.
one day.
What is your coffee order?
Soy latte.
What's your favourite place to get food after a gig?
Oh, favourite place to get food after a gig? That's a really good question. I'm generally always very Asian centric, so just take me anywhere that has like, Thai, sushi, Vietnamese, anything. Just something Asian. I'm not fussy.
What's one piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self?
That's a big one. I'd say don't put so much pressure on yourself and just enjoy the process.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Anne, for, sharing so much and, being open to chat about, all the different things you're thinking about and the roles that you have. You're such a talented musician. I feel very privileged to have you on the new podcast.
Oh, thanks, Luke. Such a pleasure to be here.
If any of the listeners want to, I ask everyone if they want to get in contact with the guests, because quite a few are more like session musician types. But I assume to see you play, they just come to see the MSO.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to book you specifically for recording or a collaborative project or get, I don't know if you do oboe lessons or
Yes.
reed making classes.
Yeah, whatever your dig is, I guess.
What would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
They can email me on 7n.blackburn@gmail.com. It's probably the best way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Luke.
No worries. Thanks for joining us on Our Drummers Musicians. I hope you enjoyed getting to know another Melbourne muso like I did. Help us grow by leaving a review, share the podcast with friends and family, and subscribe on our website for extra info. Got a guest you'd love to hear on the show? Please let us know at ourdrummersmusicians.com. See you next time. I thought it was more fun to not know, because then the last question, who would you like to record with that's no longer alive?
Yeah.
Being asked by a jazz muso, it's interesting that you go a conductor, because so many people wouldn't think about that.
Yeah.
So what would you like to ask the next guest?
Okay.
Anne?
I would like to ask them, what do they feel is the biggest challenge of living the musician's lifestyle?
That's an awesome question. Thank you.
You're welcome.